Want a Rolls-Royce driving experience without having to wait 2+ years for your car to be built? Well, look no further, because here in the BMW i7, things are coming pretty well close. Hello there, I'm El Alder, and today on Driving.ca we're in a mammoth of a vehicle. This is the 2023 BMW i7 xDrive60. Weighing in at nearly 6,000 pounds, this tremendous pickup truck-sized sedan brings a whole lot of creature comforts and some pretty significant innovations. Today we're going to go over what powers this thing, how it drives, what makes it so comfortable, and what little flourishes BMW has added into the mix. Is it worth $150,000 to $200,000? Well, that's another thing we're going to have to dig into. The i7 is one of BMW's new flagship vehicles. Complementing the internal combustion 7 Series, the i7 is an all-electric sedan running all-wheel drive through 2 motors. That's good for 544 horsepower and 549 pound-feet of torque. Pull the boost paddle behind the wheel and hit the right pedal, and you're looking at 4.7-second acceleration in a car that weighs some 5,700 pounds. It's absurd! Now, of course, that sort of electric acceleration and torque should not be a surprise to anyone. This has been the party trick of EVs since they started trying to win over skeptical consumers. And I'll be honest, it's a little concerning. Giving just anyone that much torque in a vehicle that weighs this much should be a little bit worrying in town. But with that aside, let's get on with it. I cannot understate enough the scale of this vehicle. Though its conventional sedan-like proportions make it look deceptively average, this vehicle is tremendous. Between its long wheelbase and overall scale, this is one of the most comfortable and really usable electric vehicles on the market today. There in the back, you have loads of legroom, and likewise up here in the front, it's really easy just to spread out and get comfortable. Again, in the boot, loads of cargo capacity. Though the sloped floor makes it a little bit awkward, it will hold more luggage than I can even really estimate offhand. Cruising on the highway, its squared off dimensions and large mass give it a really satisfying sense of inertia. You just sort of cruise along on that pleasant air suspension, gliding over expansion joints, and not really finding yourself fazed by much of anything around you. Better still, BMW's Advanced Driver Assistance Suite is really solid here. I'm keeping hands on the wheel right now, but I'm really just letting the car's automatic adaptive cruise control and really strong lane keeping do a lot of the heavy work. Peering ahead through the heads-up display right now, I see that it recognizes all the vehicles around me, it shows me which vehicle it has locked onto as a reference, and it shows me exactly where across the lane I am. It's really high-resolution feedback, and it's really reassuring when you're on the go. Driving it around town is a little different, of course. You do feel and recognize the scale of this car, and to be honest, I feel a little bit rude pulling through spaces with it. The squared off dimensions do make it easy, and equipped with rear steering as this thing is, the car does shrink considerably. It is so easy to pivot this thing around obstacles. Parallel parking is honestly quite a breeze, and that's even without using its inbuilt parking assistant. That parking assistant too, really neat stuff. For spots that you use frequently, or even just your home driveway, you can actually set it up to remember a specific path of up to 200 meters, and it will just autonomously follow that when it's set. BMW's 360 camera views are also deployed to great effect here, and they're here sharper and better than ever. It's a really, really natural system to use, and it all behaves so intuitively. Topping all that off, you've got Featherlight electric power steering. It's just so tremendously accessible. And with that Featherlight steering, you also get that Featherlight suspension. The i7 rides an improved evolution of BMW's air suspension system, now with even larger reservoirs just to reduce noise just that bit more. Even on large 21-inch wheels with less sidewall than I would like to see on a luxury vehicle, this thing just absorbs the brutal surface of roads like Eglinton and Toronto. EVs have been promising beautifully quiet rides for some time, and to be sure, without the noise of an internal combustion engine, they do deliver on that quite a bit. The caveat there has always been that without that noise up there, you've got nothing to mask all of the other noises inherent to driving. Even in a lot of premium EVs, accessory noises as well as road and tire noise have long stood out and been kind of disappointing. Right now, I do not hear the wipers going, only the pitter-patter of rain falling on the glass. When I hit bumps, there really isn't any suspension noise to speak of either, or any of that reverberation through the tire. And on those tires, it is remarkable just how minimal the actual road noise is that comes through into the vehicle. This is a properly and comprehensively quiet car. And with all that auditory attention comes another opposite strength, which is, my goodness, the audio in this car. The i7s come standard with, among other things, speakers in the headrests. There is this phenomenal depth to sound. I've been blasting all kinds of music in this thing all week and just enjoying every moment of it. Bowers & Wilkins setup in this car is rated at 1965 watts. It's almost 2,000 watts of audio. The result is this overwhelming concert hall vibe, but without feeling forced like typical reverb-heavy setups. It just does it all so well, and with so little background noise to pollute, it just gets better and better. Accompanying that acoustic emphasis is the whole suite of vehicle sounds composed by Hans Zimmer. That cannot have been cheap, of course, but it is a really neat trait of this vehicle. Everything sounds symphonic. All the little warnings, the blips, the bongs, it's just nice. And if that weren't theatrical enough, BMW has fitted this thing with a full-width theater screen in the back there. If I push this button here, this screen comes down and the blinds in the back close, just to darken things up and to make sure that we don't distract other drivers with SpongeBob or whatever we're watching. Now, this tester doesn't actually have a SIM card in it, so I'm not able to demonstrate that to you, but hypothetically, this is enabled with Amazon Fire TV, and you're able to watch all sorts of stuff from that and other streaming services. It's pretty neat and should be a really nice way to unwind, especially if you're stretched out in the equipped executive lounge seat in the back right corner. Stretch that up, and this front seat moves forward out of the way. Then the back seat raises up an ottoman to support your legs. A little footrest pops out of the back of this seat here. The whole thing reclines a little bit. And then on top of that, you can enable your rear seat massagers. Topping all that off, quad zone climate control. So each passenger gets to pick their own temperature. Of course, this isn't the only vehicle that does this. The Lexus LS will do it. The Mercedes Maybachs do it with slightly nicer leather, it must be said. And to be honest, though it doesn't include the rear seat massage, I gotta say that I actually prefer the lounge seat in the Genesis G90 that I drove recently. That one just gives you a little more recline angle and some slightly nicer, less tacky controls. Now, those controls. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the i7 here gets all glossy and spiffy with these tablets mounted in the sides of each door. It's a neat little interface. You can control your temperature and everything through that, including the shades, the other window, all your seat controls. With that being said, they are just little Android tablets embedded into the vehicle, and they do feel like it. You know when your auntie has this weird little off-brand Android tablet and everything in the interface feels a little bit cheesy? Well, that's what you get embedded in the doors back there. You get all your controls through there. You can control the blinds, you adjust your seat, your climate, your seat ventilation or heating, and media controls and all of that. But it just feels and it's especially when you contrast it with the strength of what I have up here in front of me. See, the i7 equips BMW iDrive8. This is the new system with the dual screen, so you get your digital cluster and then another large screen here in the middle with all your regular infotainment stuff. It's a very powerful system. There are loads and loads and loads of features in here, and it's customizable to boot. I will say that it is powerful to a fault. There are a lot of features in here, and it's really easy, even after this much time, to start to get lost in them. You can set shortcuts, but to be honest, there are a lot of functions that should just be immediately accessible that aren't. Even basic things like enabling my seat massager takes 3 or more taps depending on where you left the menu before. Hopefully this gets streamlined with future over-the-air updates, but we'll see. The curios don't end there. Having a digital cluster opens up a lot of room for BMW to experiment. You can configure this in all different ways, different styles, show different information or not. It also enables certain things like an augmented reality display. Here in the i7, you can actually set the cluster up to show in its center a video feed ahead of the car. Overlaid above that feed, you see graphics depicting different things that the car is interpreting. Catch up to another car when you've got adaptive cruise on, and you'll see a missile-locked square home in on it. Really just affirming that it sees it, it's not going to hit it. If you're using the BMW native navigation, this also actually overlays Mario Kart style direction billboards when you need to make a turn. It's really funny seeing it there overlaid as you approach an intersection and you just follow it. Just boop, 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 boop. It's fun. Though I will give BMW credit here for at least designated some dedicated access points for different controls. The fact that all of them are just there blindly and without any tactile way of finding them gives you the worst of both worlds, to be honest. Most of these controls do give you some haptic feedback when you press them, but it can take a surprising amount of force to actually get them to activate. It's this odd sensation of pressing against an unyielding surface until it finally boops, just a moment too late. It's just not nice. Having said that, the overall styling of the cabin here is something to behold. BMW has made very interesting use of contrasting mood lighting, and you get all of these jeweled surfaces all across the dash and onto the doors. Of note are these jeweled seat adjusters, the drive selector, and the central iDrive control knob. They look really nice, and I've got to say, a lot better than the jeweled details we've seen in some other vehicles like the Volvo drive selectors. With that being said, I do wonder how well these are going to age. You see, as with the i7 and XM's pig noses, BMW has acknowledged a somewhat cynical design language for the moment. They aren't necessarily going for beauty or even nice. Instead, they're going for shock factor. They're designing these vehicles for people who want to make an entrance. They've said it's meant to be provocative, to evoke emotions one way or the other, and I mean, fair play. And if you're someone who does want to make that statement, more power to you. I do suspect that the novelty of some of these details will start to fade as we see more and more of these cars, and I'm not sure for buyers how this stuff is going to look in a couple years' time. These jeweled adjusters look really nice, partly because there are only two components. It's simple, it's clean, but the thing is, these seats move a lot more than just two controllers worth. This means that you have to press another button to invoke a menu on here. Then, one by one, you have to tap into a graphic of the seat cushion that you want to adjust, move it very slowly with this weird deceleration curve on top of that. It keeps going even after you let go, just for softness, but it means that you overdo your adjustments. And it's just more time consuming than it needs to be. Obviously, you're not going to be adjusting your seats all that often if you own the car, but it's just, why? Come on, guys, why? Now, once you've got those seats dialed in, they are really nice, though it's worth noting, not necessarily for all body types. Depending on the state of your arms, it's also worth paying some attention to the girth of this steering wheel. I have found it curiously tiring to drive because it's so thick that I can't hook my thumbs like I normally do. That means there is a slightly more active holding of the arms up in position for your 9 and 3. It's certainly not the end of the world, and it's really a small complaint in a vehicle that offers this much goodness, but it is something that stands out and bears mentioning. Now, if you go all the way with one of these things, there are a lot more nice features in the seating too. I can't say the massagers are the best in the business, but they do offer a lot of different modes, and they are forceful enough to count as massagers. You can also even enjoy heated armrests in an i7. Once just the domain of Mercedes, it is nice to see another brand catching up with this. Now, finally, we do have to talk about the fact that this is an electric vehicle and brings with it all of the considerations of an EV. Now, on paper, the i7 all sounds pretty promising. You've got a 105 kilowatt hour battery, of which 101.7 are usable, and on a level 3 DC fast charger, you can recharge at a peak speed of 200 kilowatts. BMW's NRCan reported efficiency ratings on this car with these 21-inch wheels is 24.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Even driven relatively mildly, mostly in the city with climate control off in what have been ideal EV temperatures, this thing has been averaging high 27. Though I was initially worried it was just me, I've since corroborated with peers who have driven this exact car that 27.7 is about what you get. This is a very heavy vehicle with a whole lot of accessories in it. An EV not reaching its manufacturer's claimed range and efficiency estimates is nothing new, but it's worth noting that in real-world use, you're probably looking at numbers closer to 350, 370 kilometers off of this battery. That's still pretty respectable, but it's not quite what it says on the tin. So finally, what of this i7 as a value proposition? Well, to be honest, especially in this class of vehicle, that's really hard to say. Buyers of high-end premium luxury vehicles like this will often pay what they feel like paying, particularly if brand loyalty is involved. From its Canadian base MSRP of around 150K, it's actually not an unreasonable price for all of the feature content you get, the exceptional quality of its ride, and the fact that this is a full EV. With that being said, a car like this one that has all the things will get you up there. This car falls just shy of $200,000 Canadian. And at that point, you're only about 55 shy of the base price of a Rolls Ghost. Though the nice materials that you're going to see here in the i7 are not quite the beautiful materials that you will see in a Rolls-Royce, chances are this platform is more or less what we can expect to see underneath the Rolls-Royce Spectre. And honestly, with that in mind, this i7 starts to seem something of a bargain. For Driving.ca, I'm El Alder. For more luxury car news, reviews, previews, and everything else, be sure to follow us online on Driving.ca and check out our socials over on Instagram and Twitter.